Calling the meeting of the Bartlett Regional Hospital Planning Committee to order at 12:01 p.m. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our new member. Let's get started. I think we can skip the roll call since there's only three of us and we are four.
I have attendance noted.
Yes, thank you. Is there anybody online for public participation? I don't see anybody, but okay, seeing none. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Sure. Agenda first.
Oh, is that? Oh, yes, we do.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
Would you like to second it?
I'll second.
Thank you. The agenda is approved. Now we'll go to the, is it really the February 2nd?
We have public participation, but I don't.
I asked for public participation. I jumped over the agenda.
No, the minutes.
Madam Chair, I review the minutes.
The minutes are from December 1st. Sorry.
I did see that, but I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing something.
Madam Chair, I review the minutes.
And second again?
Second.
Since there's only three of us?
I second.
Thank you. The minutes are approved. Moving right along, let's go to old business. Mr. Rumsey, will you tell us about the parking space?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As has been reported throughout the last year, Bartlett performed a parking study to identify needs, gaps, and to gather additional information and develop alternative solutions to address those parking needs. The study consisted first of a site assessment and a parking inventory that included both the main Bartlett campus, also Wildflower Court parking, and then it also looked at the BBGH property, the Juno Bowling Point property, for the site assessment. A review of the relevant parking standards and an associated analysis was performed to see whether we had a surplus or a deficiency in parking. And then there were spring and summer surveys to gather perception and satisfaction information from employees, patients, visitors, others that would be on campus. That also gauged interest in what some potential parking solutions might be. There was an engineering evaluation and a development of parking improvement alternatives. And then lastly, an analysis and some recommendations of those alternatives. I didn't include this study in this report because we're still analyzing it internally. At some point in the future, I'll bring some recommendations to the senior leadership team so we can come up with a path forward. I wanted to provide some initial highlights and takeaways though for the planning committee. When the facility master plan was conducted approximately 3 to 4 years ago, it identified a 125 parking stall deficit here on campus. This study used several different methods to analyze what our parking needs should be and essentially validated that we have approximately 125 stall parking deficit. By some standards, it actually showed that we may have a surplus, but on large part and on average, it showed that we do have over 100 parking stall deficit. The survey responses confirmed that there was dissatisfaction with parking here. That was employees, patients, and visitors. But that dissatisfaction could have come with the quantity of parking, the access to and ease of parking, and other concerns associated with parking and then getting to where you need to be on campus. This was exacerbated especially on the backside of campus you think about, we've got ED traffic, we've got ambulances and other traffic going back through that. That's also where all of our major deliveries come into our loading dock on the backside. We also just constructed a new behavioral health facility. And so some of those surveys, one was conducted in the spring of 2023, one was conducted toward the end of the summer so that we could get some seasonal variations there. But they all had indicated that that is a particularly challenging area for parking here on campus. Let's see, where am I at here? So of the recommendations or alternatives that were identified to address some of the parking deficiencies, the highest rated alternatives in the report, in the study, were construction of new parking structures or complete reconfiguration of the main lot here at the front of campus. Obviously, both of those, either of those would be very high cost construction. There were some really good alternatives that were presented, which would be more minor alterations to existing parking areas that could get us make a meaningful dent in at least the parking quantity deficit issue. So we've got some more to look at, and I want to present those to SLT before we identify a path forward. Unless there's any questions, that's all I wanted to present today on the parking study.
I just wanted, on the dissatisfaction, you mentioned that on the whole, there was dissatisfaction in the parking and that there were a number of options. Did they ask was there follow-up to ask what they were dissatisfied about? And you just summarized it, or was it not a question, just out of curiosity?
No, it was, so there's some different schools of thought on how we could have tried to develop the surveys. We could have developed one survey in the spring and then use that exact same survey again in the summer. But we identified that there had been some missed opportunities potentially in the first survey. So the second survey had some slight modifications to it that helped us get some more of those specific questions. The study, which eventually I'm happy to provide more information on, but it does list out every single question. Many of those were on the Likert scale, just saying I agree, strongly disagree all the way to strongly agree. Some of them were interactive maps that said, where did you park today and where were you trying to get out on campus? So we could identify pedestrian pathways as a part of that too. But we did try to collect as much detailed information. There was also open-ended comments that were collected and we reviewed those, but as you can imagine, that's a comprehensive review also.
One last question. I know you don't have a survey in front of you, but do we know what the number of participants?
Yeah, we have all of that. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I don't recall
That's okay.
specifically.
Just wondered if you knew.
For whatever reason, the first survey we did had a vast majority of respondents were employees. And so we also made some changes with how we distributed the survey the second time, and it was a much better balance of respondents in the second survey also. So
When we first started talking about this study, there was a lot of interest in excavating that area that I call east of Valley Med, called south. And that looked to me to be really potentially expensive. Where is that in this whole mix of things?
yeah, we looked at, through the chair, we looked at several options that I don't think were obvious at face value, including not just that, but also down behind the Aurora Behavioral Health Center. We own some of that property down there. An alternative was developed, I think, as we go through and look at what's realistic and what do we think is actually going to be practically helpful to solve these problems. We'll have some tough choices to make, but that was considered.
Is that still in the mix? Is that still considered? Did that shake out as unrealistically expensive, or?
It did, but that doesn't mean that we couldn't still consider it. That is the best way for me to answer that question.
Both options?
Yes.
Chair, what, do you recall what the main complaint was? Like, I had to walk too far from my car, there was too much snow in the parking lot, or, was there any main complaint like that?
Through the chair, I would say the largest complaint was inability to access parking close to where that individual needed to come into the building. If they were going to go to the ED, their ability to park near the ED to get there. And that's why we also wanted to collect some data at least that said, well, where did you then have to park and what did that pedestrian route look like? But in general, I would say the ability to find parking where you felt you needed parking
Nearby.
was the largest complaint.
Any other questions?
One quick question. Thank you, Madam Chair. So really quickly, do you think that part of the survey was skewed a little bit because of all the construction that we had this summer on campus?
Through the chair, yes, and some of what was asked about that was what is your satisfaction about how we've had to make use of parking areas for construction laid out? So I think it was because during some of those periods of time, we had construction trailers taking up parking spaces. Actually, I think maybe during that entire time, it may have shifted around, but the entire time. And then also, and that was another alternative that we discussed about a possible solution to some of this is, might we need to find something other than parking spaces as some dedicated contractor laid out for construction in the future.
Was the mobile MRI in the same space? Where was it?
I don't think during the survey it was there yet, or it may at the very end of the last survey period for the second survey ended on August 31st. So I guess it probably would have just gotten in place.
Any other questions? Anybody? Okay. Let's move on to our next issue, the ED renovation project update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For an update on this, we had our formal stakeholder design kickoff meeting on November 28th. We had a pre-kickoff meeting prior to that to specifically talk about the AII space. And then we had a follow-on meeting with some additional ED stakeholders that couldn't be there for the 28th on the 7th of December. Kim and I are scheduled to meet with that stakeholder group again next Monday on the 8th, although it sounds like we may have some challenges with people being available then also. But we've been active. My point there is we've been active. Lisa, the project manager for this, and Jean are tracking on the timeline to put us on a successful procurement path. Right now, their recommendation is that we go down a similar delivery method. It's the construction manager at risk or the GCCM delivery method. What that would help us do is it would bring the construction contractor on board prior to the design being finalized, which should help minimize issues that come up in the handoff between the design effort and the construction effort. So I think that is a good path for us to pursue right now, but in order to do that, one of the things that we need to move forward with and get finalized is the certificate of need. When the decision was made back in February of last year to put a pause on this project, we also put a pause on the certificate of need. So I've been working with Nathan Overson, the city project managers, and the design team to try to finalize the amended certificate of need. And I would say we're within maybe a matter of weeks of having that ready to resubmit to the state. And that's going to help us facilitate both bringing starting the procurement process to bring a construction contractor on board, but then also to free up the funding. Right now, with the certificate of need process, we're not allowed to exceed that $1.4 million spending threshold until we've had the certificate of need approved. So we need to get that finalized as soon as possible. And we're on track. It should be within the next 2 weeks or so. And that's all I have for the ED renovation update for now.
Are there any questions?
Just a slight question. When you do this renovation project in the emergency room, how is that going to affect patients coming into the emergency?
Through the chair, it's a tough one. Anytime we're going to be renovating space, there's going to be at least time periods where work is going to be affected, and in this case, obviously, patients would be affected. We're adding a slight addition on this project, which should give us some additional swing space to try to mitigate those impacts. We know, for example, we're going to have to relocate the nurse's station function for a period of time. There's going to be an impact there, but I don't think that should have any meaningful impact to patient care at all. It's just going to be a challenge for our folks who are working down in that space. So we're working to mitigate that. What I don't have as of now is a specific sequencing schedule. But the team that we have working on this project on the design side are very aware that we need to maintain operations and mitigate any impacts to patient care. So once we have more of that information, we'll be glad to share that.
Registration on the lower floor takes up a fair amount of space. And I heard at one point, or I think I heard at one point that we were contemplating moving that somewhere during the construction phase. Is that an option or a real thing?
I'll go through the chair.
And how far away will it go from the ED?
So registration right now is really bifurcate. You've got your main floor registration, and then you've got your ER focused registration. We looked at this renovation project as an opportunity for us to address that issue and also improve patient access to the ED. So access to the ED will move closer to the entrance to the building on the backside, where you would enter directly in, and patient access would be right there. As soon as you come into the ED, you'd have patient access services, registration services. With what we have right now, their space likely will shrink a little bit. Some of that is, an effort to make some procedural changes with trying to do bedside registration, and some of that is to accommodate the need to have more routine security presence in the space. So yes, we are moving them. Yes, the space will get a little bit smaller for them to accommodate the other clinical needs and the needs of the operations of the emergency department specifically. And they're aware of that. They've been involved in the process so far.
I look forward to hearing the progress. Item number C, I hate that alphabet soup I get wrong every time. JBJC BBGH property purchase update.
Madam Chair, the reason I put that on this time is I actually attended a public meeting for the local emergency preparedness council last month, and one of the owners of BBGH was there and expressed some frustration about referring to that property purchase as the Juno Bona joint property. They expressed people continue to think that we're buying the practice, not the property. So just throwing that out there. This is a public meeting, and so I wanted to make it clear the owners of the property and the owners of the practice are not necessarily the same exact group. As it relates to the procurement, since the last time we met, some concerns had come up about the condition of the underground fuel storage tanks at the property. They have 2 underground storage tanks. They're 1,000-gallon underground storage tanks just to provide heating to each building. Over the past month and a half or so, Mark Walker and I have taken the time to research the initial installation of those underground storage tanks, and we feel very comfortable with that. We've also gone down and conducted in-person inspections of those storage tanks with the property owner's manager down there. So with all that being said, I think we've been able to address the concerns that came up, and we're comfortable with the condition of those tanks. The purchase agreement itself had been transmitted for a while, but had remained unsigned while we were trying to gather this additional information about the tanks. So that's something, now that we've collected all of that information, I intend to come back to SLT and finalize moving that forward. And that's the update that I have for today. Unless there's any questions.
So Greg signed it, we haven't, is that?
No one has signed it.
No one has signed it.
Part of the reason that it was not signed by them when it was originally transmitted is because they had some concerns about some of the basic contractual language related to what they would need to disclose about the tanks. And that raised our concern, and maybe we need to look into this. But we've been able to work through that on the contractual language side, and we've been able to go down and get more information about the condition of those tanks, so.
You got a question, Mr. Carter?
Yes, those tanks become our liability once the
That's
property
correct.
is purchased. Are they double wall tanks?
They are. That's one of the things we wanted to confirm. And we inspected the vents, we inspected, they just have an inspection cover that lets you see the general condition of the top of the tank, where the supply lines come out of the tank, where where it's actually vented from, and overall the tanks look to be in very good shape.
My only question is, so do you think this will be signed by our next meeting, or when do you think
I
all
think
the signatures will be on there?
I think that's quite possible, yes. There do not appear to be any informational barriers, gathering information that would prevent us from moving forward.
Any other questions? All right. Surprise, number 8 is Mr. Ramsey again.
Through the chair, this is the last time you'll have to hear from me in a
Today.
presentation, at least today. I had talked with Ian about putting this on the agenda for today, and we thought it was a good opportunity to signal how we're moving forward, both with our recently adopted organizational strategic goals and also on making needed improvements to the way that we are identifying, maintaining, and tracking organizational goals throughout the hospital. So bear with me real quick. Actually, Anita, can you go directly to page 7? So for those of you that participated in our last organizational strategic goals session, you're familiar with what we put together, and I would encourage you to read through the rest of the packet as a reminder. But Ian put together some direction for the hospital that really wanted to give us a chance to kind of dip our toes into what this is going to look like. What is this going to look like from a working day-to-day perspective? And he asked us to start putting department-specific goals together that we're going to focus on quality, operational processes, and then Anita, if you go on to the next page, please, and on where applicable, where growth may be needed. And then if you could go to page 13, Anita. So part of what this does is it gives us some standard some standard formats and standard language that's going to allow us to communicate not just what the goals are, but how we are holding ourselves accountable to those goals, how we are achieving those goals. And one thing that Ian had presented us with was not just the A3 format, which is a standard format for what we use for our QAPI process improvement initiatives right now. But then also out on the units, how are we showing that our operations are improving, are efficient? And so he had showed us this, Ian, I think this was a recent example that you had.
Yeah, this is an example from St. Joe's Hospital in NICU. St. Joe's has about 4,000 births a year, and so their NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, is very specific. But these daily management boards are in every single facility, every single department of Virginia Mason, Franciscan health system. So it provides everyone on the unit the ability to understand what the unit is trying to achieve, what their goals, how they're being measured against those goals. It also allows anyone who comes through there to see how well we're doing. So I would, if I round it, I'd always stop at the daily management board and say, how are we doing on falls? How are we doing on, urinary tract infections, all those different things. And it is considered the best practice throughout the United States. We don't have it here. Some people get concerned about those metrics, but one of the things that you have to understand about the goals is that you have to be accountable for your goals and objectives. And the best way to be accountable is have them visible and see how you're doing it and have people question you. We had no problems with our patients and their families seeing these things. They sometimes would be a conversation between the family about, we're on orthopedic, that's where you have a lot of falls. And, we had a fall last week, and that was because an elderly gentleman didn't want to use the call light to get out of bed to go to the bathroom. If your spouse is in here, tell that old guy to use the call light. because falls in an elderly are very serious things. And so we wanted the family to know that we really want your spouse to be safe, and you can help us with that. So we always felt it was a very good thing for patients to see. The medical staff will have their own views on this because they may be up there in terms of performance. In our clinics, which we had a lot of them, we had performance metrics for the physician and how far behind they were in seeing the patient. The patient would be there at 10 and the physician is 15 minutes behind. So you'll hear about these things.
And so,
We start implementing.
yeah, this is just kind of that initial, dipping our toes into how are we going to communicate the initiatives at the department level that are going to eventually support where we're trying to get strategically. And we've got, here within the next week or so, we've asked those department managers and directors to have some of those initial goals. And,
Yeah, they're due the 12th. We're going to start reviewing them right after Martin Luther holiday, Martin Luther King holiday. So they'll present them to us. I got to get all the stuff formatted, but we also want them to present so we can understand, are these goals realistic? Are they measurable? Are they, specific enough? I also gave them directions. Don't put a goal in there that depends on some other department doing something. So the typical one is I want a brand new system to track this, and that requires 2 years of IT work. We just need to increase our pace with the things that we can actually get done right now. So some of them will be daily, some of them will be hourly, some of them will be weekly, but I don't want goals that went past a quarter.
So this is just an exciting first step towards putting that, strategy into action. And thought it was worth taking the time to present that today. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I had a couple of questions. First of all, I love the board. I like that, the accountability factor. I think it's great. I know we've talked about this. We've seen this somewhere before. Last month or so, we talked about this. So this is maybe too deep into the weeds that the board will have to even know about, but the responsibilities for making sure that the boards are kept up, making sure that the departments are on there. And then would that be like our COO, CNO, would that be their responsibility while they're doing rounds and like that? it's probably a level that the board doesn't really need to get into, but I just wanted to know a little
The
bit about it.
typical way that I've done it in the past is, okay, let's say we have, I was gonna say 600 department cost centers. It's probably not, let's just use 50. How many actually have daily management boards up? When we do our rounding, are we actually stopping there? We have huddles in the morning, are they doing huddles in front of them? There's a number of different techniques. But what you want them to do is maintain that, and then we have to maintain a discipline of going and looking at it, making sure that they're maintaining it. What I found, it's not 100%, but a good 60-70% actually really like it after a while because it becomes a focus. The conversation becomes a focus of what you're trying to achieve. Assisted leadership. But the board could ask us, okay, if you have 60 cost centers, how many actually are not? And we'd say, well, of the 60, we got 49. Why is the other 11 not out? Well, we're still dealing with the measures, we're still dealing with some physician concerns. Or the manager just doesn't like that, and that's a different conversation. So, yeah, and then you could ask, okay, what's on your typical daily management board? Is it quality operational statistics? So we could give you broad general aspects. And then the final question I would expect the board, how do these tie into the goals that we approved? And then we can go through that. Well, you approved goals around quality, and we have specific quality goals that roll up there, but we have to watch it on a day-to-day basis in each one of the departments. Like falls would be a good one. Those are the sorts of things that I would expect to be able to report back to the board, or have either Ken or Gail report back.
I don't have a question. I just want to say this looks really good to me. I just was really pleased as I went through this preparing this meeting. Just have to say.
My question is, does this also apply to the wildfire court?
It applies to every single cost center. So
Because wildfire court is kind of easy. I mean, there are 4 or 5 things that you need to be looking at.
sure, and there will be exceptions, but generally that's going to be a one-off. And I would approve if someone came to me. In our clinical areas where we really, and maybe some of the other areas like patient accounting, you just need to be able to be really good at this stuff. What I'm not looking for perfection, because this is a skill set that we're developing. This is a skill set that we have to practice. It's a skill set that will improve over time if we maintain this. But it's something that I have found to be fairly helpful in organization.
I have one more question, but how did this affect surveyors that came in and looked at your boards and said, oh my God, we had this many falls and we had.
I, through the chair, I've always found the surveyors to be interested in that. You can actually show them that you're interested in the things that they want. Now, sometimes when we use JCO here, JCO, you would expect to review some of the new things that JCO has and see whether or not we need to incorporate it. That gives you a background of saying, look, we have these new rules or guidelines for JCO. We've incorporated into our data management report so we can make sure that we got it. So I haven't seen anything, but you never know.
I have a implementation question. How, so far as the department leadership and staff receive this?
I would ask others.
I can go, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think it's important, a lot of our departments, like for OB, are already doing this. They're just not putting it up on the board, so they're already doing the quality stuff, so now it's just putting up. I think most of them are excited to be able to do it, to showcase all the work they're doing and improvement they're doing on their units. And then some are like, same kind of thing. Not, worry about how they're gonna find the time, but I think once they the communication I've had with my direct reports is like, yeah, you're already presenting all this quality data already, labs are already doing it, now it's just putting that up on a board for others to see. So most of the departments are already doing this, they're just not showcasing it.
Yeah, Madam Chair. So, flashing forward, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to bring this up, but this is operational goal setting, strategic planning. Should we be thinking, Nate and Ian, about when we should set our strategic plan, for 2024? Or I know that our document just kind of got approved, but we've said it's going to be a fluid document. Do you think, Nate, we should be working on that now? We should set our next meeting for strategic planning and have the whole board involved and our assembly liaison. I didn't really think about this until I saw this on the agenda here. So what are your guys' thoughts? And I guess this committee's thoughts too.
Through the chair, I have not had that conversation with senior leadership yet, so I don't want to speak for anyone else. The timeline that we had, from when I started at least, I was hopeful that we would have been, that we would have gotten the strategic goals adopted before it took us, before November, October, whenever we finally got that done. So I haven't given that a great deal of thought, but yeah, my general idea was, at least on an annual basis, we need to be revising and looking at that. And then maybe with a 3 to 5 year, now we're doing a more comprehensive, reconsideration of what our strategy is. But again, I haven't talked with Ian about that. I haven't talked with Joe or Kim about that yet. So
Let's get back to you in terms of our next meeting.
My inclination is that we don't necessarily want to have strategic planning fatigue. So, yes, we need to do it, but I'd wait for a little while until this piece of it, the operational piece of it gets before we, and we do need to, I guess my question is, and it should have been all along, is are we adopting a strategic plan based on our fiscal year, based on a calendar year? This year, it looks like a calendar year because we didn't adopt it until November. So it's something we need to think and talk about what it is we're looking at.
Typically, my experience has been regarding that question, Madam Chair, is that you adopt the goals and some strategies that last a period of time, usually 3 to 5 years, and then adjust them each year. The goals are very broad and can last quite a long time. The seamlessness, the quality, those are kind of areas, but each year we would either continue on, or if there's a new one that we had to add on, we could do that. But I think we've adopted some broad guidelines that will last us quite a long time. And then we can get more specifics.
I guess my question was the review period,
Yeah.
the look back period. So we have just adopted them in November. Is our goal setting 3 to 5 years from July 1, because that's our fiscal year, or 3 to 5 years from, what's the?
Typically, they're
The look back.
fiscal years.
That's my experience, but.
can I add something, Madam Chair? One thing that Ian has talked with us about is the timing actually may have worked out very well as we get into operational goal setting, because we're also getting into planning for the budget. And so, yes, it doesn't coincide with the fiscal year, but it helps us have some visibility and guidance when we're thinking about what next fiscal year should be. So I would just throw that out there for consideration. The timing in this case was not bad, because now we can use that information to help us plan out the fiscal year. Is that fair, Joe? Okay, all right. Wasn't sure if you were dissenting.
Any other questions or comments about our presentation today, the operational goal setting? Project updates. Do we have Ms. Wren on?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Let's see, some of these projects under construction will not be on the list next month because we're wrapping several of them up. Behavioral health facility, I believe, are seeing clients on the 3rd floor finally, and we're wrapping up punch list items on that project. The underground fuel line replacement is still underway. They were expecting some pumps in late December, and those will likely be going in probably now. The Valiant siding project is wrapping up. There's just a few punch list items that will need to wait until spring for appropriate weather conditions. The CT scanner MRI project should be wrapping up towards the end of January. And I believe since this report was written, I think we have a ship date on the chiller finally. I don't know if you can confirm that, Nate.
Yes.
Yes, so that's good. And let's see, and the Wildflower Court canopy demo, that's all done. We addressed the structural issues on the horizontal canopies by removing them because it would have been pretty cost prohibitive to replace the whole structural system. But the entry gable is safe. Nate Rumsey already gave you a very thorough update on the ED edition. We met with Nate and Mark Walker on the surge protection project to kind of summarize work we've done to date and possible next steps, and Bartlett is reviewing those possible next steps. The ground floor asbestos abatement project is getting underway. There have been meetings this week. The challenge with that is we're abating the asbestos containing flooring in the materials management area and the laundry area, as well as some other spaces near those areas. And the big challenge is figuring out how to do that work safely with minimizing disruption to those operations. It's I don't know if you've been in materials management. It's a giant supply closet with I think at least 3 offices in there too. And obviously the laundry facility is a critical operation to Bartlett. So we're making progress on that. And then also we're getting started on Wildflower Court fire alarm replacement. That system, their fire alarm panel parts are obsolete for that. So that needs to be upgraded, and it'll have to be replaced. And the goal is to tie it into the main fire alarm panel at Bartlett. Any questions?
I guess I have one question. It's something I should know, but I'm wondering, can you remind me, when do we anticipate that the CT scanner MRI project will actually be in operation?
I don't have the exact date for that through the chair, but I can follow up on that.
I probably could too.
Through the chair, as of the last weekly project meeting, they're looking at, by the end of February, having the new CT up and running. We're right now scheduled to keep the temporary trailer under contract through March. We could make a change if we needed to there, but the worst error would be to not be able to provide the service in that case. So, but there have been moving pieces. We just now found out when the chiller that the chiller had shipped, and we're getting the tracking information on that. But they're making really good progress. This project has stayed on schedule so far.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So your lead-in, Ms. Wren, is a lot are going to drop off. This is going to be a short page if that's Or are you
Yes.
guys, are you guys planning on adding to it? Or are we planning on adding to it? Just out of curiosity.
Through the chair.
yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, Jean had mentioned, for example, we are having conversations. We haven't yet had the opportunity to meet, but about the surge protection project. We do have some decisions to make about projects that we want to move forward with. And then the other piece that I wanted to mention for those that have routinely been on the planning committee, my project updates are not in here this time. Jean and I have been meaning to meet to consolidate our efforts for what's going to come before the planning committee. And so that's why for this month, we only have Jean's updates in here. And Jean, obviously we need to catch up. I got your email.
The reason for my comment is I wanted to thank you all for the great work you've been doing over the last few years. This has been over the last few years. A lot of work, a number of pages, and it's great to see a lot of this stuff coming to fruition and closure. So thank you, all the parties involved, for making all this happen. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the project update? Okay, wow. We're coming to the end. New business is 24 committee meeting schedule. We traditionally have met on the first Friday of each month at noon at this time. If that still works for any, it works for me, but will that work for you as well? Then we'd like to stick with that. If that works with you, is there a proposal to change that from the administration side? Okay. Then it looks like this will work for folks. And I think I like the sequencing, the planning has the opportunity to discuss the project and then roll it forward to finance committee. So, okay. Any questions or comments for the good of the order? Welcome. Thank you. All right, I believe, well, the next meeting, that would be February. February 2nd, if that works for everyone. We do occasionally modify the dates to accommodate travel and other things, so. February 2nd it is. All right, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.